Hello everyone and welcome. I'm Mary Beth Fitzpatrick, Superintendent of Royal Oak Schools. The cities and school districts of Royal Oak and Berkley are proud to announce this joint Martin Luther King Jr. Day event for the entire community to remember, participate, and honor Dr. King. Today you will hear from members of the community on how Dr. King's message has impacted them. You'll also hear uplifting music from the Detroit Youth Choir and more. And today, January 17th, 2022 at 11 a.m., we hope you will join us at Royal Oak Middle School and march together to show our support for Dr. King and his mission to advocate for civil and economic rights. We are also collecting donations today at Royal Oak Middle School from 10:30 a.m. to noon to support the Redford Brightmore Initiative, Cass Community Services, the Judson Center, and Gleaners Community Food Bank. These groups help so many people as they are in need of toiletries, non-perishable food items, diapers, and so much more. We have a full list on our website. Again, thank you for joining us today. We hope you will be inspired to give back to your community. Enjoy the program.
Greetings, Berkley and Royal Oak schools, teachers, staff, students, families. My name is Congressman Andy Levin. I represent you in the halls of Congress here in Washington, D.C. I'm also a former Berkeley Bear, and it's just really great to be with all of you today to honor the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. You know, Dr. King was such an important force for good in this world, and he taught all of us so much about social justice, about building a beloved community, about fighting for peace and justice for all people, all across the world, and also right in our own neighborhoods. And Dr. King's message about racial and economic justice is just as important today as it was when he was murdered in 1968. For me, in my life, I think it's important to fight for racial justice and economic justice every day here in Congress and back home in the community. And I want to encourage each and every one of you to take some time today to read some of Dr. King's words. Maybe check out the letter from the Birmingham jail, or watch one of his speeches you've never heard before. Let's all do what we can to make our world more just for all people. We have a lot of work to do today, many years after Dr. King died, and we can only do it by joining hands together. Thanks for everything you're going to do today and every day to make a more loving world and a more just Berkeley, Royal Oak, Oakland County, Michigan, America, and our whole world. I can't wait to see what your generation will do to make this world better for everybody. Thanks.
Today, our nation celebrates the legacy of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Yet when Dr. King was alive and working for justice, civil rights, and voting rights, he was frequently slandered by some of his fellow Americans who thought he was too progressive, too radical, and ahead of his time. He responded by saying that the time is always right to do what is right, and continued advocating for the rights and equal treatment under law that many now consider essential to our democracy. And so today, I hope that we all take a cue from Dr. King and recognize that now is another time to do what is right. Now, amidst a national, coordinated, partisan attack on our democracy, we must stand up, organize, speak the truth, and vote. We must exercise the rights Dr. King made possible to ensure our democracy continues to become what he dreamed it could be. I hope you'll join me in celebrating Dr. King's legacy in this way today and every day. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Royal Oak Mayor Mike Fournier. Dr. Martin Luther King's life, work, and legacy serves as one of the most important modern foundations of our nation's concept of freedom. He helped shape how we think about, acknowledge, and recognize injustice in all of its ugly forms. Dr. King's message is universal and everlasting. We know this today as we fight to protect voting rights and seek racial justice in all of our nation's institutions. We look to Dr. King and other civil rights leaders of the past to draw inspiration as we pursue justice ourselves. His legacy has shaped everybody's life differently. For me, Dr. King's legacy has instilled the importance of service to others, to do what was within my individual power to pursue justice for all of our brothers and sisters. And that meaningful change happens when we ground ourselves in peace and love. I'm grateful for the gift Dr. King has bestowed upon us and draw hope from each of you in your pursuit of freedom, equality, and justice for all.
Good morning, Royal Oak and Berkley school districts. My name is Mr. Anthony White, and I am the Artistic Director of the Detroit Youth Choir. It is our pleasure to be a part of your 2022 MLK Day celebration. The songs that we have chosen for you today reflect both the hope of change while not forgetting the struggle it takes to bring change about. Enjoy and have a great MLK Day.
One day, when the glory comes, it will be ours, it will be ours.
Oh, one day, when the war is won, we will be sure, we will be sure. Oh, glory, 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 glory.
Oh,
Oh, glory.
If you're black and you're proud, hands up. If you wanna make a change, I'm my leader, stand up.
Look, I'm tired of seeing my people on the news, texting my friends, hoping they're okay too.
And yeah, we get that all lives matter, but I get to choose the color of my skin, so how does that matter? Your job is to serve and protect me, so where's the protection? Not only dying from racism and COVID infections.
Kicking snacks like Trayvon, get some sleep like Rihanna. The more they kill us off, we're losing our mothers and fathers.
Listen, when will enough be enough? I shouldn't be afraid that I'm next to go in handcuffs.
Look, it's time to team up and stop the cruelty.
My border's up and I see him walking towards me.
Walking, yelling no justice, no peace.
Kneeling until my people reach equality.
Now the war is not over, victory isn't won. We'll fight on to the finish, then when it's all done, we cry glory, oh glory, oh glory, oh glory. We'll cry glory, oh glory.
something must be done as soon as possible. And if we come together, we're unstoppable. If you're red, white, yellow, green, or blue, this isn't just our fight, nah, it's yours too. More than being enslaved like my ancestors. It's time that we expose the country's transgressions. We're the future, not the past. It's time to steal the present. Unity is what we're wishing for as a present. We doing Zoom calls, protests, rallies, and more. The bigger we are in numbers, yeah, we can even the score. The year is 2020. Let us make that clear. This the last generation they mess with fear. And when we get old, the stories will be on repeat. Fighting for our rights and mass and trying to keep 6 feet. With my hand in yours, we get our justice and peace. Fists up, it's time to come together on our own streets.
Glory,
together so we can be one.
These are tough times we live in, but we still can't give in. We must stand tall and live strong. It's up to the youth to live on.
We carry this torch we pass down. You see, I know it's not the last round. In the next generation, my faith is unwavering.
My confidence in you is unshakable because I know you're willing and far beyond capable of doing it all that must be done. But to do it all, we must be as one. Life can be better than most of us dream. So once you take the reins and believe in the greatness that lies within, it's for the better, this world will change.
I see that you want it. I see that you're looking for it.
So don't take no days off.
It's gonna pay off. I see that you love it. I want you to know that
Before you can see it,
you gotta believe it.
you're the generation of tomorrow. With the pursuit starts today.
And all time is borrowed, so you have none to waste.
And you are not, oh I repeat that you are not put on this earth to lose.
Yeah, you are hot, and I repeat that you are hot, so do what you do.
And we gon' do it big. We gon' make a scene. We gon' take the colors, make them all believe.
Yeah,
that we wanna see. We're not taking average, tracing legend status. We can have the world.
we can have the world.
We can have it all.
We can have it all.
Nothing is too big.
No.
Nothing is too small.
No.
We can be the change that we wanna see. We're not taking average, tracing legend
Chasing legend status,
I
yeah.
see that it's in your heart. I see that it's in your heart. I feel it. I can feel it.
Fire. It only takes one spark. It only takes one spark, yeah, to set it on fire.
You're the generation of tomorrow.
But the work starts today. All time is borrowed,
So we have no time to wait.
And you were not, oh I repeat, you were not, who don't deserve to lose.
And you were hot. Yeah, I repeat, you were hot to do what you do.
And we gon' do it big. We gon' make a scene. We gon' take the colors, make them all believe. We gon' be the change that we wanna see. We're not taking average, tracing legend status. We can have the world, we can have it all. Nothing is too big, nothing is too small. We can be the change that we wanna see. We're not taking average, tracing legend status.
you can have anything you want, but the work must still be done. Power to change the world is in your hands.
Just believe that you can.
What is a dream without action? Nothing but a reason to stay asleep. You gotta wake up, make a decision. Life is for the living, and it's yours, and you gotta go get up. Big, yeah.
We gon' take the dollars.
We gon' take the dollars. We gon' be the change. We're not taking average. Shots and legend status. We can have it all. We can have it all. Nothing is too big. Nothing is too small. We can be the change that we wanna see. We gon' do it big. Yeah. All you gotta do is just do it. Nothing. Yeah. All you gotta do is just do it.
Wasn't that wonderful? Thank you to the Detroit Youth Choir for that performance. Next, I'd like to welcome a talented speaker who is also the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Coordinator for Royal Oak Schools. She has over 25 years of experience in education and student affairs. She's also a dedicated social justice advocate and diversity consultant that is committed to addressing issues of disparity. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Kimberly Martin.
Members of the Royal Oak and Berkley communities, good morning and welcome to MLK Day 2022. I am honored to be able to bring you a few words today about the importance of MLK Day and the significance of Dr. King's work, as it is still very relevant today. Dr. Martin Luther King was arguably one of the most influential figures in the American civil rights movement. He was also a very gifted orator. His stirring speeches touched on everything from social justice and racial justice to nonviolence, poverty, the Vietnam War, and dismantling white supremacy. And while many have been inspired by his famous "I Have a Dream" speech, King tackled a wide range of themes and causes and has inspired others to demand change. One such speech was the letter he wrote from a jail in Birmingham where he had been incarcerated for participating in nonviolent protests. He begins, and I quote, "While confined here in the Birmingham City Jail, I came across your recent statement calling our present activities unwise and untimely," end quote. These words echo the words of others in recent years who have also tried to paint the recent racial protests, such as the Black Lives Matter movement, as divisive, unwise, and even a terrorist organization in some cases. Dr. King continued, and I quote, "You deplore the demonstrations that are presently taking place in Birmingham, but I am sorry that your statement did not express a similar concern for the conditions that brought the demonstrations into being. I am sure that each of you would want to go beyond the superficial social analyst who looks merely at effects and does not grapple with underlying causes. I would not hesitate to say that it is unfortunate that so-called demonstrations are taking place in Birmingham at this time, but I would also say in more emphatic terms that it is even more unfortunate that the white power structure of this city left the Negro community with no other alternative," end quote. Unfortunately, we are still fighting some of these same battles in 2022. That's why days like today are so important, not only to honor a man who was arguably one of the most significant civil rights leaders of our time, but to remember the things that he fought for and continue to fight for those things. As King also stated, and I quote, "Moreover, I am cognizant of the interrelatedness of all communities and states. I cannot sit idly by in Atlanta and not be concerned about what happens in Birmingham. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. Never again can we afford to live with the narrow, provincial, outside agitator idea. Anyone who lives inside the United States can never be considered an outsider," end quote. King said that anyone who lives inside the United States cannot be considered an outsider. And I'll say that again. Anyone who lives inside the United States cannot be considered an outsider. This sentiment is crucial for times like this, where in the country currently we have vilified each other, we have treated each other as outsiders. Certain groups have claimed America as theirs and theirs alone. Anyone else can leave if they don't like it. As a result, we as a country currently find ourselves at sort of an impasse with each other, claiming territory, building fences, vilifying those with different beliefs. The list goes on. But King continued, and I quote, "But we must still see that the struggle today is more difficult. It is more difficult today because we are struggling now for genuine equality. It is much easier to integrate a lunch counter than it is to guarantee a livable income and a good solid job. It is much easier to guarantee the right to vote than it is to guarantee the right to live in sanitary, decent housing conditions. It is much easier to integrate a public park than it is to make genuine, quality, integrated education a reality. And so today, we are struggling for something which says we demand genuine equality, end quote. But Dr. King realized we are all interconnected. He further spoke of this in another speech he gave called The Other America. King stated, and I quote, and I use this subject because there are literally two Americas. One America is beautiful for the situation, and in a sense, this America is overflowing with the milk of prosperity and the honey of opportunity. This America is the habitat of millions of people who have food and material necessities for their bodies, and culture and education for their minds, and freedom and human dignity for their spirits. In this America, millions of people experience every day the opportunity of having a life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness in all their dimensions. And in this America, millions of young people grow up in the sunlight of opportunity. But tragically and unfortunately, there is another America. This other America has a daily ugliness about it that constantly transforms the exuberance of hope into the fatigue of despair. In this America, millions of work-starved men walk the streets daily in search for jobs that do not exist. In this America, millions of people find themselves living in rat-infested, vermin-filled slums. In this America, people are poor by the millions. They find themselves perishing on a lonely island of poverty in the midst of a vast ocean of material prosperity, end quote. On this MLK Day 2022, I implore us to remember that we are all indeed interconnected, that we are only as rich as our poorest neighbor, that the two Americas still exist. Even as I speak, there are those who will not commemorate or celebrate this day because they are worrying about how they will pay bills, how they will pay medical expenses, what if they get COVID. In King's final speech, given less than 24 hours before he was assassinated, was commonly referred to as the I have been to the mountaintop speech that we all know. In it, he addressed the urgency of the moment, and he said, and I quote, and another reason that I am happy to live in this period is that we have been forced to a point where we're going to have to grapple with the problems that men have been trying to grapple with throughout history. But the demand didn't force them to do it. Survival demands that we grapple with them. Men for years now have been talking about war and peace, but now no longer can they just talk about it. It is no longer a choice between violence and nonviolence in this world. It is nonviolence or non-existence. That is where we are today, and also in human rights revolution. If something isn't done and in a hurry to bring the colored peoples of the world out of their long years of poverty, their long years of hurt and neglect, the whole world is doomed. Now, what does this mean then in all of this great period of history? It means that we've got to stay together. We've got to stay together and maintain unity. You know, whenever Pharaoh wanted to prolong the period of slavery in Egypt, he had a favorite formula for doing it. And what was that? He kept the slaves fighting amongst themselves. But whenever the slaves get together, something happens. In Pharaoh's court, and they cannot hold the slaves in slavery. When the slaves get together, that's the beginning of getting out of slavery. Now let us maintain that unity, end quote. Now more than ever, we need to realize that we are better together. We must continue to fight for causes that are not necessarily our own, for women's rights, for LGBTQ rights, for the rights of those with disabilities, for the rights of anyone who is marginalized. As Dr. King said almost 60 years ago in his I Have a Dream speech, and I quote, "But we refuse to believe that the Bank of Justice is bankrupt. We refuse to believe that there are insufficient funds in the great vaults of opportunity of this nation. So we have come to cash this check a check that will give us, upon demand, the riches of freedom and security of justice. We have also come to this hallowed spot to remind America of the fierce urgency of now. Now is the time to make real the promise of democracy. Now is the time to rise from the dark and desolate valley of segregation to the sunlit path of racial justice. Now is the time to lift our nation from the quicksand of racial injustice to the solid rock of brotherhood. Now is the time to make justice a reality to all of God's children." End quote. Dr. King would have been 92 this weekend. Think about that. I think it's more than enough time to make his dream a reality. Please remember that as we go out today to celebrate him in a variety of ways. Thank you and have a great MLK Day.
Hello, I'm Dan Turbrack, Mayor of the City of Berkeley, and I'm honored to be able to speak with you today. I'd like to thank the Berkeley School District and the Royal Oak School District and our respective communities for hosting this annual MLK Day event to honor and commemorate Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. While we aren't able to be together this morning, I am grateful for the opportunity to still gather in a space that allows us to interact safely as we continue to have these important conversations about race, equity, and injustice. Over the last 2 years, we've witnessed monumental demonstrations taking place all across the country, including 2 here in Berkeley, regarding the legacy and present realities of structural racism. Unfortunately, this is not new to American history, but certainly reminds us that we have a long way to go. We've come together today to reflect on the life and teachings of Dr. King. For me, the theme, "A Day On, Not a Day Off," symbolizes and welcomes those working to heal our broken nation and to make our community a more just one. As Dr. King shared in his great speech, "The Other America," we must see that struggle of racism today is much more difficult. It's more difficult today because we're struggling now for genuine equality. It's much easier to integrate a lunch counter than it is to guarantee a livable income and a solid job. It's much easier to guarantee the right to vote than it is to guarantee the right to live in sanitary, decent housing conditions. It's much easier to integrate a public park than it is to make genuine, quality, integrated education a reality. And so today, we're struggling for something which says we demand genuine equality. We must examine not only the external predispositions we've witnessed in our daily lives, but our own internal biases, and seek to crush the hatred that continues to exist and rise up in our country. It's through unity and the consistent work of economic and social justice that we create communities that provide opportunities to all of its residents. When we unite for justice, the whole of society benefits. Today can be another day to show how we will stand together and help one another as we move toward a better future. And before I finish, there are a number of folks that I'd like to thank today. First, the superintendents, Scott Francis and Mary Beth Fitzpatrick, for cultivating a space where our kids feel safe and seen. The Detroit Youth Choir for that beautiful and moving performance, and my deepest gratitude to Dr. Kim Martin for speaking today on the importance of justice and equitability. Congressman Andy Levin for opening today's presentation. And lastly, I want to thank Royal Oak Mayor Mike Fournier and the Royal Oak City Commissioners, as well as my fellow Berkeley City Council members, as we use days like this to serve as a reminder to pause and reflect on our nation's past and present, but also as a reminder to why we serve and how we should carry forward in creating a community for future generations, regardless of their skin color, gender, or orientation. Thank you.
Thank you to everyone for sharing your inspiring words and for being a part of our virtual event today. We've been partnering together on this Day On event for the last 5 years, and we're so proud of how our communities come together to celebrate and honor Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. In future years, we hope to bring back our traditional volunteer opportunities, as well as continue the learning and growth we all experience today. We hope that you will join our school districts and cities in continuing the important work of striving for justice and equity for all. We are committed to keeping diversity, equity, and inclusion at the forefront of our schools to create an environment where all staff, students, and community members feel a sense of belonging. the greater community can also honor Dr. King by joining us and doing the same.
Thank you, Scott, and thank you everyone for joining us today in our virtual event. As a reminder, 11 a.m. today at Royal Oak Middle School, we ask that you come up and march with us for freedom. Thank you.
Well, Governor Whitmer, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate you being here, and all of our community members and folks from our legislature, local and state and national. We're just so thrilled to have this event. So, ladies and gentlemen, Governor Whitmer.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. It's so good to see you. I am proud to join you today virtually. I look forward to when I'll be back in person with you, but I want to thank the Royal Oak School Superintendent Mary Beth Fitzpatrick, Berkley School Superintendent Scott Francis. I have a special place in my heart for Berkley because that's where my mother went to school. And Dr. Kimberly Martin, the Royal Oak Schools Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer. Today, we're honoring the life and legacy of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And we recommit ourselves to building a more equal and equitable and just Michigan. We have been through a lot over the last couple of years. There's no question. Living through history is no easy task. And think about all the stories we'll have to tell in the years ahead. And it seems like the world keeps throwing new challenges our way and highlighting systemic issues that we've got to address. We have a lot of work to do to build a state that's really worthy of our kids, every one of our kids. And we have to tackle injustice everywhere, protect our planet, and invest in families and communities that have been left out and left behind for decades, often by design. We got a big task ahead, but I know we're up to this challenge. We should heed the timeless words of Dr. King, who reminds us that we can enact change and uplift our communities if each of us and every one of us continues to do the work. As he once said, we can never succumb to the temptation of bitterness. We must accept finite disappointment, but never lose infinite hope. Because of every Michigander in our state who fights hard for the people they love or cares for their community, who goes above and beyond, even when no one is watching. That's why I have infinite hope. I have infinite hope for our future because our kids are stronger, kinder, and more resilient than we often realize. And I have infinite hope because I know when we work together, we're capable of greatness. I'm honored every day to serve as your governor, and this is a phenomenal state that we all call home. And I look forward to working with you and walking alongside you virtually today, but literally and figuratively every day, as we seek to live up to Dr. King's legacy and build a brighter future for all of our people. So I hope you have an excellent Freedom Walk today. Stay warm, stay safe, look both ways as you cross the street, and have infinite hope. Thank you, everybody. It's good to see you.
Thank you, Governor. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.